F. Inglis Powell is one of those people. People who wrote exactly one book and otherwise became incredibly obscure. I only know he was a man because a copy of The Sun from 1912 called him Mr. F. Inglis Powell, which also shot down my tentative identification of the F as Florence. He wrote a single book, his 1912 The Snake, taking place in India during the British Raj. We open with the narrator explaining to us why he burned the snake, so that not a shred of it remains on earth. A few days prior, a Rajput man brought him a letter from an old Englishman dying of the plague, asking him to come before he dies. The narrator went to this man named John Dering, and found the man on the brink of death. Dering gave him a bundle of letters and notes and made him promise to read them and then destroy the snake, while talking about a woman coming from the grave to visit him, and it is not his wife. He yearns to die to be with his wife who has been waiting for him for 30 years, but then he starts yelling at an invisible shade he calls Diana before he is made to go to sleep, a sleep from which he will never awaken. Arranging for his funeral, the narrator finds a shut-up room none of the servants will go near, saying the snake inside is an evil god who will smite them all if they touch it. It is a dead snake, preserved and lifelike, but when the narrator is in the boarded-up pantry which has been its tomb for 3 decades, he sees the eyes of a portrait staring at him evilly from the wall. When he brings the snake to his camp, his wife has an evil dream where the same woman whose portrait he saw in Dering's hut tries to corrupt her. Then, unable to sleep, they read the manuscript left them by Dering and decide to burn the snake at once. The manuscript takes up most of the novel, and it consists of letters, diary entries, and Dering's own notes. More than 30 years ago, Ashton Kay, owner of the indigo factory in Duma, incurred the wrath of an Aghori, a beggar priest who only eats corpses, so he curses him and his whole family. His daughter Diana, already an odd girl lacking much emotion, comes back to India from staying at her aunt's for several years, and falls in love with John Dering. Only he had already proposed to her cousin Isa. Diana causes a temporary rift between them, and then the Aghori lures her to the temple of Kali, and makes her throw human flesh to a strange monster in total darkness, to make her become a servant of Kali and bind her soul to a snake forever. From this day she will come from time to time to inhabit the body of a cobra and keeps killing the local villagers. After marrying out of spite and then murdering her husband, Diana stays with her parents, jealously watching Dering and Isa's wedded life. At one point her own father does insist on hunting down the cobra, and Diana tries to dissuade him, but ends up having to kill her own father as the snake, for if the snake dies, she dies too. Her mother, after taking an inexplicable aversion to her own daughter, and already weakened from a lifetime of invalidity, dies when she too sees the snake. Isa, heavily pregnant, is laid up, and after her child is born dead, Diana goes to taunt her and assures her Dering would marry her after Isa's imminent death. Dering, meanwhile, kills the snake but finds Isa barely alive and buries her in the garden, but cannot bring himself to destroy the snake for 30 years, but always keeping it locked lest it possess any other woman.